Alright, y'all. Let me ask you a question. Do you like X-Men? It'd be weird if you didn't if you're watching this. Do you like Universal Monsters? Then this is the issue for you. Welcome. Grab your drinks for the 40th. That's why I got a 40. Tommy Reads X-Men. Celebrate with your boy. Let's get to the issue. What's going on? It's your boy back at you again with another Tommy Reads X-Men. The show in which I read every X-Men in order and give you my own unique take on it. Today, we are looking at X-Men number 40 from January 1968, written by Roy Thomas with art by Don Heck, and Warner Roth does the backup story, which we'll get to in a little bit. This one is called The Mark of the Monster. Now, if you know nothing else about this issue, know this. In this issue, the X-Men fight Frankenstein's monster. That's right. Monsters and mutants going at it. So we start off like we normally do with kind of a training montage. Although we haven't had that for a couple issues. But the X-Men are training in the Danger Room. Professor X gives them a little, I need you guys to get in here so I can tell you some stuff. So they go running in and Charles hits him with this. X-Men, I've learned that Frankenstein's monster is real. And they're like, oh, okay. No sooner are the X-Men like, what? Then Papa Chuck's like, now shut up. Shut up. You shut your mouth so I can monologue. And then he starts to monologue. And he's like, basically, I've been using my powers like a police scanner out there, boop, 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 monitoring everything. And I came across these guys in a ship who found a dude in block of ice. Now, I know you've heard that story before, MCU fans, but this has a little bit twist because it is Frankenstein's monster. That's right, he ain't Frankenstein, he's Frankenstein's monster, and he was covered in the ice. Now, how Professor X is like, how Mary Shelley knew about this, I don't know. Like, as if she's there, like, oh, okay, what's happening here? You know, oh, monster, he's green, and got bolts in his neck. And, but Professor X, and then Bobby's like, Frankenstein, what's that? And then he's like, you know, I assigned that last spring. It pains me that you didn't read this. Now, I was thinking, what do you mean you assigned it last spring? Are you still teaching them? Like, the X-Men graduated way long time ago from high school. Is he their college professor? And if so, how come Jean's not getting credit going there and to her college? That was a weird thing to say. It was almost as if they wrote this a long time ago and then we just got to the story now in issue 40. But, like, what grade are the X-Men in? You know what I'm saying? After finding out that Frankenstein's real, Angel's like, so what's next, guys? We're going to be, like, going down the yellow brick road looking for the Scarecrow and all that? Now, Angel's been dropping some good references recently.
Personal flying monkeys. Monkeys. Do not understand.
I do. I understood that reference.
Now, it's Professor X's theory that Victor Frankenstein, or Frankenstein, is a mutant. And he built what is essentially the first android. Because this guy's got metal parts, he's like machine or whatever. And then again, he disparages Mary Shelley because he's like, well, I don't know how she found out, but whatever. So the monster is being taken to the New York Museum. Why is it not being taken, like, a lab or something like that? And later on they have a lab in the museum, which is weird. But it's taken to the museum where a mad scientist, who they only refer to him as a mad scientist, he don't get a name, he only gets about 2 panels, basically thaws the ice and brings the monster back to life. Only to say, and only for maybe Don Heck to draw, him going, he's alive! Like they do in the movie. Now, is he acting like the guy in the movie? I haven't read the book. Is he acting like the guy in the movie? Or is is it just coincidence that he's saying that? I somehow doubt it. Anyway, the X-Men show up and they're trying to get into the museum. And the guard's like, oh, Professor X, as if he's like, you know, a member there who goes all the time. He's like, Professor X, hey, you and these kids, it's nighttime, so you can't get in the museum. And then Papa Chuck's like, Jean, now. And then Jean uses her mental power to knock out this guard. Why they just didn't mind wipe him, like Papa Chuck known to do, is beyond me. But Jean knocked him out. The X-Men get in there, and who do they discover? On Frankenstein's monster. That's my dope tattoo, Star Wars. Anyway, so they start to fight Frankenstein's monster, and it don't go, like most round ones, don't go well for the X-Men. He is just taking everything they got, getting hit, bouncing off him like, what? And, at this point, I started thinking about how he got thawed from the ice, and really, my man here, Frankie, ain't no different than Cap. Like, he's a dude in the ice from a bygone era, thawed out in our modern times, and he's like, what? I just want to be left alone. But no, people have to razz him, make him join teams. Anyway, we were talking about Captain America. Anyway, so one weird thing, so Cyclops goes, and he's like, optic blast. And then Frankenstein's like, psh, dirt off your shoulder, optic blast. And he's got an optic blast too. Now, while they're at the museum, and the X-Men are fighting Frankenstein, after the optic blast, Scott gets pulled to safety by Jean. And she's like, out loud, she's like, oh, Scott, I can't let anything happen to you. Now, since the early issues, like 2 or 3, Scott's been pining away for Jean. Like, oh, Jean. And he had the love triangle with Angel. That was all in Angel's mind. It was really like Angel's third wheel. But Scott was like emo Scott this whole time. And when Jean professes her, love for Scott, what does he do? Does he go like, oh my gosh, Jean, I've been waiting to hear those words? No, he's like, I don't have time for this. I don't have time for this. While he's fighting. I mean, granted, he was in the middle of a fight, but still, like, the character Scott Summers has been pining. He's like basically right now, all he is I heart Jean, I got laser eyes, I'm the serious one. And those are his 3 traits right now. Now, Cyclops is one of my favorite characters, so we do get more from him later, but like, those are his 3 main things right now, and he totally ignored one of them. I don't know, it just seemed out of character. It was a little kind of out of it. He starts to leave. He's like, screw you guys, I'm going somewhere. And then he takes off. Now, the X-Men, the curator for the museum, who had been calling the police or whatever, shows up. He's got a gun, and he's like, stop right there. And Iceman, for the 2nd issue in a row, freezes somebody. Like, completely freezes them. If this was DC and Mr. Freeze, that dude dead. But he's not. He was just like, oh, I can't get free. And then Iceman does a quick ice pun, and we out. The X-Men jump in the Rolls Royce, and they start to track Frankenstein. Very inconspicuous. So after they leave in the Rolls, they go to an airstrip, and Charles starts mind-wiping people left and right, and they steal a helicopter. This ain't really helping mutant-human relations, I feel like. I mean, yeah, they're going to return it, but that copter's going to be busted up. And Angel's flying above head, and he finally sees all the carnage and chaos that I'm going with Frankie, as Frankie's, leave behind. And they finally track him to this harbor where he's hiding in the ship, because he need to get out of New York. There's too much bright lights, big city. I need a quiet village where I can haunt people from a cave. Now, at the harbor, the X-Men start looking around this ship for him and stuff, and we get Cyclops' little bloop, bloop, bloop. And he's like, I can't believe Frankenstein's like a real thing. Really? Really, bruh? You can't believe it. You've been to space. You've been to space and fought space aliens over space magic. Space. And you can't believe that this monster is real? That's your cutoff. Where you're like, you know what? Everything I done seen in these past 4 or 5 years, next thing you gonna tell me Dracula's real. Next thing you want to tell me the Easter Bunny's real. Cyclops finds Frankenstein, and it's X-Men versus Frankie, round 2. And again, not going well for the X-Men. But this time, they got Papa Chuck. Now, Papa Chuck, Xavier, is like, what you want? What you want? I'm the guy who's like woke you up. I'm who's in your head. Why don't you step to me? And now while Frankenstein's like slowly lumbering over, Iceman decides, he was put in ice before. This is he and Charles's plan. He was put in ice before Frankenstein's monster. And he's like, let me do it again. So he covers the dude in ice, and instead of being trapped in there and then being a monstersicle, and the X-Men sending him on his merry way, he busts out of that like his tin foil. He busts out of it like it was wet tissue paper. But his body blows up because he's an android, apparently. Now, Papa Chuck says, he starts monologuing again. So he's like, just as I suspected. And the X-Men are like, what'd you suspect? And he's like, number one, don't you ever question me when I said I suspect someone, because I know I'm Papa Chuck and you ain't. That's the theme for every episode, every issue of X-Men that he's in. Anyway, so he says, just as I was able to read his mind as he was about to blow up. You know, there's a lot of assuming on Charles's part, but he said he was able to read his mind as he blew up. And it turns out that Frankenstein's monster, y'all ready for this, is actually an alien that was an ambassador, going to be an ambassador to Earth, and that's how aliens thought humans looked. And he got sent down and he malfunctioned. Okay, a lot of questions behind that. One, was Victor Frankenstein still a real guy? Was this, and was he a mutant still? Like you were, assuming and thought you were completely right about before? Was, this the same Frankenstein from the book? Was, and then later on, like the whole book, they're disparaging Mary Shelley's book. And he's like, I don't know how she found this out about this alien, but whatever. And then like as if that now it's not a documentary that he was so sure of before. It was almost as if Marvel had drawn the issue, written the issue, and then in the last page they're like, we might get sued for this. Let's make him an alien. Let's make him an alien. Yeah, he just happens to look like what the movie version of that movie that was based on a book looked like. Does that sound confusing to you? Does it sound confusing enough that we're not going to get sued? All right, let's go with that. And then that's the end of the main story. Let's go to the backup story. The backup story was called The First Evil Mutant. Now, that's going to be important later. It was written, again, by Roy Thomas, but this time Warner Roth was doing the art. Now, we're introduced from last issue to this mutant who lured Scott Summers, a young one, to his creepy shack with the power of his mind. It sounds horrible. Let's just move on. I'm taking the high road on that joke. His name is Jack Winters. And all of a sudden he hears police coming, so he teleports he and Scott to this chemical factory. Just so happens that that's the factory where, see, he's not a mutant, because he describes that he was in a factory trying to steal stuff, that he used to work there, and he has gambling debts, as we all have, and he was like, let me steal some of these chemicals, sell them, make my money back. There's an explosion, an accident, and all of a sudden he has powers. That ain't a mutant, bruh. That ain't a mutant. That is a scientific experiment gone wrong. Technically you're a monster, but, not a mutant. Mutants are born with their powers, and they manifest. Now, this guy had, he spilled some Gorilla Glue on himself, and all of a sudden he could read minds, he could teleport, and taking off his gloves, he shows Cyclops, what? Diamond hands. He has hands made of diamond, and Cyclops is like, oh, and he decides to call himself, because he got diamond hands, and his name's Jack O' Diamonds. Jack of Diamonds. And he's like, we're going to go on a crime spree, Sonny. And Cyclops is like, before he was called Cyclops, Scott is like, I don't know. Meanwhile, Charles Xavier has been tracking this story. He's been tracking Scott Summers on this early version of Cerebro they mentioned, because it's basically just some knobs and one screen and stuff. Not the fancy Cerebro we have now in 1968. But it kind of looked like, if you remember Wonka Vision from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, the one where Wonka lures Mike TV into it. Anyway, he messes with his hair. It's real creepy. But anyway, Charles uses his Wonka Vision, finds Scott, and he's like, somehow he gets there. I don't know. They just have him show up. He can't teleport. So did he take a bus? Did someone drive the rolls? What? Anyway, so he's there and he's like, Jack of Diamonds, you ain't hurting this kid. And he's like, I'll hurt you. End of issue. That was the end of the backup story. Let me hit you with some final thoughts. All right, y'all. This one was about an 8 out of 10. Now, first off, just from the cover, and like you could tell by my excitement at the beginning of the issue, X-Men versus Frankenstein's monster. I love the X-Men and mutants. I like Universal Monsters a lot. You know, I would say I'm a fan of them. Not a huge fan, but a definite fan. You know, and I love going to Universal Studios in Hollywood. That's one of my theme parks. I really enjoyed going as a kid whenever we got a chance to go. And yeah, so Universal Monsters versus the X-Men, sold. I'm in. During the quarantine, I started reading Frankenstein's Marvel comic from like the 70s, I think it was. Really wordy. It's a lot of word bubbles. But, you know, it's been okay so far. And, you know, I've always been a fan of the Tomb of Dracula comic from the 70s. I remember way back in the day, before they had the Epic collections, before they had, you know, this and this, they had the Essential line. You know what? They had the Essential line. This was Marvel. This one's for Godzilla, which one day I'm going to do a review of. But it was basically like, you know, black and white. Look at that great artwork, man. Great artwork. Is like phone book size. It's like newspaper print paper. And I had all the Tomb of Draculas, all like, I think it was like 4 volumes. Don't know what happened to those, man. I miss them. You know, maybe if they ever do an Epic collection. Do they have an Epic collection for Tomb of Dracula? Let me know in the comments. But, you know, maybe one day I'll read them all again. I got Marvel Unlimited, so I might just do that rather than, you know, rebuy. Anyway, so Universal Monsters against X-Men, that was incredible. Enjoyed that. The action was really good. You know, I thought the backup story just ain't doing it for me. You know, the 3 issues ago, we had Papa Chuck's backup story, and that was good. But this one with Cyclops, and especially a lame villain like Jack O'Diamonds, it just ain't doing it for me. I'd rather see, you know, 5-6 more pages of, you know, them razzing Frankenstein. Maybe the Wolfman shows up or whatever. Anyway, or Werewolf by Night. I guess that would be their version, right? So I enjoyed it, except for the backup story. I had to take a point off for that. And then I had to take a point off for, it was like they got cold feet at the end. They're like, oh, he ain't Frankenstein's monster. You know, don't sue us, people who published that book. He's an alien, just happens to look like him. It's like they got cold feet, and like all of a sudden, like the beginning of the issue, Professor X was so sure that Frankenstein's monster was a real dude, Frankenstein was a real dude, and Mary Shelley was just someone who was recording it all. Not that, you know, she made it up incredibly out of her mind. And then at the end, he was like, oh, well, I guess that's not the dude, but I still don't know how she wrote that book. But so it was real, like, Mary Shelley bashing issue, but I enjoyed it. Does it make me want to read Frankenstein? Not really. Does it make me want to see the movie? Kinda. But, you know, maybe I'll go watch the Monster Squad instead. So, 8 out of 10. I really enjoyed it. Can't wait for next issue. If you like what you're seeing, or mildly entertained, please like and subscribe down here. Hit that bell notification in the corner. I don't know exactly where it's at. Feel free to spread the word about YouTube's best kept secret, the Tommy Loves Stuff channel. If you like this review, there are 39 other issues of Tommy Reads X-Men. Please check the playlist in the descriptions in the channel. If it's your first time watching, thank you for letting me entertain you. I appreciate it. Me keeping you busy for a couple minutes, distracting you from your life, hopefully entertaining you. If this is your 50th, 60th time watching, I appreciate the love. Continue the support. Let people know about the channel. It only helped me out. Help us get the word out and make the channel bigger to where I know it can be. All right, see you next week. Later.